that applicant's question and answer period. And our first applicant in alphabetical order is Mr. John Jones.
And Hardy, can you bring him up on screen when he starts talking?
I can try. I don't see any audio controls for John. I'll ask him to start his video.
Do we know if he's out there?
I can see his name, and I've asked him to start his video, but I don't see any audio controls for him, so he may be offline for a moment if you want to go to the next candidate.
We can come back to him, right, Josh?
Yes. So the next candidate would be Lisa Kruger.
Hi, Lisa.
Hey there. Well, Hardy, do you need to do anything, or I just proceed?
You can proceed. I'll pin you to the spotlight so everybody can see you.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure I'm following the Zoom rules here. Well, thank you so much, you all, for the opportunity to speak for the board today. And I really appreciate the time and the thoughtful approach that you all are taking to make this an inclusive process. I know this is not something that comes natural. 15 years ago, my husband and I actually finally were able to call Truckee home. And I feel so lucky that this is where I get to live. And this place has really become family to me. And giving back to this community has become core to who I am. It has even reshaped my professional career, being a certified fundraising executive. From 2016 to 2018, I did have the honor to be appointed to and serving on the Airport Community Advisory Team, ACAT. And since leaving, I have continued to closely follow ACAT's work and that of the Tahoe Truckee Airport District. Over the years, I started volunteering with the Tahoe Truckee Air Show and then serving on ACAT. I really understand firsthand the work that the Tahoe Truckee Airport District does to try and maintain that balance, the needs between the airport and those of the community. From acquiring and protecting open space to community outreach through events, programs, and nonprofit support, creating dialogue and ways to engage in conversation around noise abatement, and understanding a more significant impact that the airport district has on the growing surrounding region. And as we all know, it is growing, and there's a huge influx of individuals and families moving to our region full time. While I'm not a pilot, I do understand the needs and the necessity of the airport, its operations, it's the pilots and the aviation businesses. As an airport is in considerable value to a community and its vitality. As a community, there's an intangible set of benefits that are often overlooked that are needed, like having CareFlight and its emergency services stationed here, the ability for CAL FIRE to use the airport as a hub for its planes and helicopters during fire emergencies, which we know this year has been all too often. And also being a stakeholder in helping finding solutions in our communities, like affordable housing. While you personally may not be utilizing these resources directly, you have a friend or neighbor that probably is and has. This community needs a strong partner to continue to thrive and grow while maintaining the beauty, that's great, an environment that we so cherish. The ability to balance all this is never easy. And I realize there's always going to be challenges and that not everyone will agree with the decisions and how the funds are spent. But I believe with my background, community work, and coupled with a balanced approach to finding solutions and the ability to be open-minded, that I would make for a strong addition to the airport board and represent the needs of this entire community fairly. So I want to thank you all for the consideration today.
Thank you. Did we ask questions now, Josh?
Yes.
Of her?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, I thought we were going to get all the 3 minutes and then ask the question in order, like if I have a question, I'd like all 5 to answer.
But yeah, I would defer to the board on that. I was thinking we would do each applicant, but we don't have to do it that way. We could do it, Director Headington, the way you request.
I
Or
would
some
prefer.
combination of both.
Or a combination of both. It's up to the board.
Okay, so Rick or Lisa, do you have any questions you want to ask now, or do you want to wait till the end?
I'll wait to the end. And actually, I have no questions since I already asked all my questions privately.
Okay,
I don't have
All right,
any
well-
questions right now, Teresa. Thank you.
thank you, Lisa. Don't go anywhere.
I won't. Thank you.
All right. The next applicant is Bill Quesno.
There's Bill. Bill's muted.
Now I think
There
I've
you
had
go. Yep.
technology. It's getting tough. As Ms. Kruger said, thanks very much. I know this can't be easy, especially via Zoom, but doing what needs to be done and filling Director Morrison's position. So that's great. It's interesting. I've been an airport user for 30 plus years, and the changes at the airport since I first learned to fly when we moved to Truckee are pretty profound. It was an uncontrolled airport, no tower, no bypass bridge, no AWAS, no anything other than just an airport kind of in the middle of the Martis Flats. It has come a long way, and I'm proud to be able to say that I was able to be part of that, being on the ACAT, being on the initial ACAT, being a board member for 4 years, and then the district engineer. Pretty familiar with, or very familiar actually, with Brown Act and special district governance and all those things that come along with trying to operate a small district in a fairly remote, relatively remote portion of California. And I think that it's important that after this coming election in a couple, 3 weeks, there may be as many as 3 new board members. And I think that my experience allows me to be able to hit the ground running, so to speak, and help the board continue on its journey with the minimum of interruptions. It may be that there's only 1 new board member to replace Director Wallace. It may be there's 3. Hard to say. Why am I running? Actually, during the last election, I thought about running, but after seeing the candidates that had signed up, I felt that it wasn't necessary because the voters had a good range of people with a wide variety of skills and interests and technical abilities that they could bring to voters, and voters had the opportunity to make a sound decision. As for applying for Director Morrison's position, it's kind of the same thing, although I thought it was important that there's a wide range of people and the board members have that same opportunity to make a decision based on that individual candidate's abilities. So first thing, a couple focus items. One is to maintain the 15 plus years of the district's efforts to reduce noise and annoyance. No doubt that some of the things that have worked very well and some of the things haven't worked very well, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't continue to try. And you might be frustrated, or the board might be frustrated, the staff might be frustrated, the residents might be frustrated, but it doesn't mean you give up. It just means that you try something new, whether it's pretty standard stuff or a little bit out of the box. I was on the board when that first flight tracking system was installed, and it's like, this is nutso. And now look what the airport uses it for. It's pretty great. There's some other operational changes that may or may not work. Looking at different traffic pattern altitudes for larger aircraft. I'm all for continuing the modification of instrument and both IFR and VFR arrivals and departure procedures. I think that all pilots.
Sure. I apologize. 3 minutes are up. If you could finish.
Oh, sorry, Josh.
No.
So focus, reduce noise and annoyance, good governance. I wanted to look at the district's messaging methodology. I have some friends in the Prosser area who weren't aware of some of the things that the airport's done, using grant funding, purchasing open space and belonging to joint power. Sorry, I ran over. Should have rehearsed. Appreciate the opportunity to be considered.
Thank you, Bill. Anybody have any questions for him now, or do we want to wait for everyone until the end?
I'd like to wait till
Okay.
the end.
Thanks, Bill.
Next applicant is Catherine Rolfe.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
You
good.
put her up front, Hardy? No?
Yeah, she's there.
Oh, there we go. Hi.
Are we good? Okay.
Yep.
Good afternoon. Thanks for considering me for the appointment to the vacant seat on the airport board. As you all know, I have served on the airport community advisory team for 5 years. During that time, I've seen many changes at the airport, most of which have been positive. I think the board has enacted policies and improved infrastructure to improve safety, abate noise, and enhance community benefits. I'm proud to have served on ACAT and to have been a small part of these improvements. Moving forward, I think our district and our region is facing an unprecedented challenge. I think the primary issue facing the airport right now is growth. How does the airport plan smart growth in tandem with the town and with other agencies in our region? We're looking at huge numbers of people visiting, staying for longer periods of time in STRs and in second homes, and moving here. The town, the PUD, TTUSD, the sanitation district, and many other agencies will have to grapple with the reality of a significant increase in population for much longer stretches of time. A bigger population and more visitors means more air traffic. Since 2005, the airport has seen a threefold increase in flights. As ACAT members, we're charged with looking at creative and innovative ways to reduce noise annoyance to the community. During my tenure on ACAT, we have funded engine improvements to planes flying with commercial entities at the airport to provide quieter flights. While these measures have provided modest changes to noise annoyance, they're probably not enough to make a difference in the quality of life in neighborhoods such as Olympic Heights and Sierra Meadows. If I'm appointed to the board seat, I'm hoping to enact measures that would make a significant difference, such as flight dispersion and possibly building a new runway such as 1634, which would direct traffic over land not so populated by houses. Another issue facing the airport with the explosion in population is tax revenue. Since I've been on ACAT, the tax revenue afforded the airport each year has almost doubled. The airport makes a lot of money from fuel sales, hangar rentals, and other fees. So I strongly feel the airport has an obligation to put tax revenues back into the community. That said, the airport is not and should not be in the business of managing grants and the nonprofits who seek funds. I believe the answer is to partner with other agencies to find common goals and then to fund them together. If the goals are definable and mutual, they should be easier to oversee. If the airport does decide to fund any of the many fantastic nonprofits in our region, I recommend identifying a new staff position or even a third party that has experience with grants who could lend expertise to the process. Again, I thank you for your consideration. I'm optimistic about the future of our community, and I think the airport can and should be an effective community partner.
Thank you. All right, so we'll hold questions and go to, should we go in order? Andrew, Terry, yeah.
Hi, I'm Andrew Terry. I've lived here in the Placer County portion of Truckee for 30 years in a noise-impacted area. I'm not a pilot. I've been active in airport business for many years, taking a sabbatical since the last time I ran for airport board 4 years ago. I narrowly lost to the current chair. I have consistently attended board meetings for many years. I have also been a member of ACAT for multiple terms including the position of treasurer and chair. I was also on the founding committee for the Airfare and Family Festival. I relinquished my seat on ACAT to run for the board. I've also attended Foothill Airport Land Use Commission meetings, AOPA conferences, town meetings, and a couple of UC Davis noise symposiums. So I have a long history with working at and with the airport. I believe the airport should be an integral organization serving the entire community rather than its more historic focus on simply providing aviation and some ancillary support services. In this regard, I think it should be central in the regional transportation infrastructure and emergency services, as well as opportunistic support for other government and charitable organizations. It should continue to endeavor to acquire and manage open space under flight routes and noise-influenced areas. It should maintain airport infrastructure to a high level, especially considering the harsh weather conditions we experience. It should also provide an interesting and challenging workspace for the district's employees. So again, I thank the board for your consideration of having me join you on the board of the Truckee Tahoe Airport District. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we find John? There's John.
Yes, there I am. Sorry, technology challenges.
Oh, good. Well, you're up. It's your 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you, Madam President. As most of you know, I've spent 8 years on the airport board. I'm an avid pilot. I'm also an avid supporter of the local community, the Tahoe Basin, and everything that this community offers. I am a very strong supporter of safety at the airport. Debbie was a very good personal friend of mine, and it underscores how important safety is at an airport that has become very, very complex with skydiving, a number of jets coming in from one direction, a lot of small general aviation, airport planes, and our glider community. My focus primarily would be on safety at the airport and reducing the noise that we produce for our neighbors. And while we can't reduce all the noise, we can be really good partners to our neighbors in some form of give back for the inconvenience that we cause them. In the past, we looked at insulation. I think right now we're looking at helping with defensible space, which is a significant issue for our community. I'm heading up a forest initiative for the Tahoe Fund and spending enormous amounts of time in trying to determine how to reduce the fire risk to the Tahoe Basin, which is our major focus. I believe my record shows that historically, I've been a strong supporter of the community and the significant number of nonprofits that use our airport and get support from our airport. Having taken up almost all of my 3 minutes, I'd like to thank the board for your consideration. I'd love to come back and help close a number of projects that were started years ago while I was involved with the airport. Thank you.
Thank you. So how are we going to go about our questions? Mary, you want to start?
Yeah, I was picturing asking a question and then having all 5 answer it, and then asking another question. That's kind of how I'm envisioning
Perfect.
it. And I would say, so I have about 5 questions. So I would start with John and go down the list, and then the next time start with Lisa and go down the list, just to break it up. And so I have about 5 questions. So I don't want to dominate it, but do other people? What is everybody else's thoughts? I know Rick said he's not going to ask any unless something comes to mind, because I know he sent out and got written responses. Just asking other board members, do you have questions per se?
Mary, from my point of view, it's fine if you start us off on the questions, if that's
Okay.
all right with Teresa.
Absolutely.
So my first question,
Quick question, Mary, before you get started, can we just establish an order so each participant knows when they should unmute themselves and answer?
so my first question, I would start, John would start and would go through an alphabetical order. My next question, Lisa Kruger would start, and then John would be last. The next question, Bill Quesnell would answer first, and we go through an alphabetical order.
I like that rotation of answers.
So,
Thank you.
So my first question was, I sent the Moonshine Inc. article that I flap around at almost every board meeting. I sent it to all 5 of you, A Tale of Too Many Special Districts. When I saw that article, it was an epiphany to me to see how much property tax, ad valorem money, is in our region. I believe that our region is much stronger if we all work together rather than stay in our silos. What are your thoughts regarding the various special districts combining forces to address our region's needs? And what do you think are those needs? And we'll start with John.
Well, the answer is we were actually discussing a joint project when I left the board, trying to get a home for one of the nonprofits down by the high school, doing some swapping of the downtown library, moving it over to the regional center. I mean, I think collaboration between districts is a smart thing to do, because we don't have all the answers. I don't think there's a way technically that we can combine them into a single entity, but collaboration, I think, is a significant part of what we should be doing. I mean, we are collaborating with Park and Rec, given that the airport owns the Ponderosa Golf Course. We're collaborating with a number of pieces of property that are used by our community, and we're maintaining those. So the answer is, I'm a very strong proponent of collaboration when it is in the best interest of the community.
Thanks. Okay, Lisa.
Unmuted. So Mary, to answer your question, it's a resounding yes, as far as I'm concerned. And I love where the airport is already starting going with these JPs, these joint power authority agreements that are already be put in place, because I think collectively, as all of the special districts together, we can accomplish so much more. And I love that we are starting to do those things through the affordable housing, which I think is something that's really important. I think transportation and being kind of maybe the key to pulling all of those different entities together is the role that an airport can play. But as we look at all these other districts, is that, they may also have initiatives where they could use our support. So it's not just about, the main role that would benefit from an airport standpoint. I really think that, the library that's coming on board, there's things like the Performing Arts Center, there's all sorts of things in the community that are starting to come up. And I love the fact that if we proceed to be open to these JPAs that we collective as a community can be a solution to these answers. So.
Okay, thank you. Bill, you're next.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. I too am a strong believer in collaboration and districts working together. Something that drives me absolutely crazy is that when districts fight and charge each other taxpayer fees for projects, I run into that all the time. It drives me nuts. So collaboration, working collectively for the big picture is the right way, and that's sometimes that's the only way that things happen. I get a little bit I guess I get a little bit put off sometimes when joint power agencies or collaborations required because some other government entity that's charged with fixing something doesn't act. And so I would be all for the airport joining a JPA, but I would also not want to let the pressure off the agency that's responsible for taking the lead to solve the problem in the first place. And I think it's also important that every JPA or collaboration or teamwork project is different. Sometimes it's based on staff expertise, facilities you might own, land expertise. Sometimes it's just how much money is in the bank. But if entering a joint JPA needs to take into consideration who's supposed to be in charge of that and how the agencies that want to solve it will go about solving it, rather than just joining together without a real good plan how to move forward.
Okay. Kat.
Hi. Yeah, I'm again very much in favor of working with other agencies. I think the board made a really smart move when they required an agency sponsorship to seek the larger grant dollars that we've given out. I think sharing that mutual interest in the nonprofit asking for dollars is a good way to build partnerships and to sort of get a pulse on what every agency has prioritized. I thank you for sending me that article because I pulled out my property tax bill and I was able to decipher it better than I've been able to before. Obviously, the airport brings in a lot of tax dollars that's not necessarily budgeted for, and I don't know if other agencies are that flush with extra tax revenues. So I certainly think the airport has felt a little bit of pain just being asked over and over for money, maybe when other agencies haven't been. And it would be, I think it would be really interesting to have some transparency around that, just region wide, to see, what priorities are and interests and how much money is available or they would like to make available for those kinds of projects.
Great, thanks. And Andrew, Terry.
As with all four other candidates, I agree that the airport should participate with other agencies. Yes, the airport district is well funded for the goals they try and achieve. I do think, however, we should layer a couple of restrictions on our generosity, or the airport's generosity, with participating with other agencies. One is to try and develop some sort of aviation-related nexus, so that there's some justification that an airport is involved with forestry or hospitals or whatever. I think it's fairly straightforward that we could find such nexus, but we should go in with a goal of finding some commonality with regard to aviation. The second is that we should probably market our participation a little more heavily, such that the community recognizes the airport's participation in these projects or agreements or whatever. So with those couple of provisos, I think, yes, the airport should be involved wherever is feasible. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a follow-up from any of the other board members on that question?
Not me.
So given, it seems like everybody's in support of it. And, the airport gets about 7 million. This is a question I think that Rick brought up at the last meeting we had, and the airport district receives approximately 7 million in annual property taxes and generates another 7 million from fuel sales, hangar leases, and other sources. And the airport requires approximately 8 million. And then we get about 5, this like last year in the Moonshine Inc. article, it showed 16 million, or 19, but 5 million of that was a federal grant to do runway work. So, it's about 7 and 7, and the airport needs about 8 to 9. So what ideas do you have? I mean, this is a more specific, what are, that's a chunk of money. And these other agencies do also, because when you pull up their budgets, there is room. But what are the main focus areas? Give me 3 of the main focus areas when everybody's in support of these working together. But what do you see are the main 3 areas that this region, the problems we're facing? And
I think I'm next.
Yeah, Lisa's first.
That goes to Lisa.
Yes,
so I kind of heard 2 things in there. I heard 2, what are the main focus that I currently see?
Right.
And so what I would say that there's a couple things. I believe it's essential that the district continues to set the example as a leader, as a special district that receives public tax dollars, who consistently knows how to weigh and balance the aviation needs of the community and those of the greater community. Continuing to be proactive around solutions regarding noise reduction, reducing traffic over neighborhoods, and flight operations. When I think specifically around aviation needs, but being that vital partner in overall transportation needs, our growing community is facing. And also, I'm a big proponent of the workforce housing component. So I like also the fact that we've begun that conversation around greenhouse gases. So I don't have like specifically one area. I sort of divided them out, like here's specific needs going on for the aviation community, and here's where I think we can make a significant input for the outside community.
Great, thank you. Bill.
So I would say I kind of following on what was just mentioned. I believe that the airport should continue to figure out ways to do noise annoyance reduction, and part of that probably at this point needs to be some kind of big infrastructure, runway change, whether it's constructing an all new runway, extending, widening runway 0220 so that the traffic can be moved around. I don't know that that's going to be FAA fundable, and I think the district needs to take a big chunk of money and start setting that aside if that's the direction it wants to go. I also think that purchasing open space, we all hear about open space, and I believe that purchasing open space should be the district's a big priority for the district. As long as there's a nexus to aviation, even if the district is the sole purchaser of that. In the past, the district has partnered with other people, other agencies, nonprofits, but I think the district should have a significant amount of money in the bank to be able to act on land purchases when they become available. And even if it's, like I said, fronting the money for that. Transportation, we've all witnessed that. If there's a way to tie transportation in the airport and regional highways and people movement, whether it's allowing the airport's extra property to be used for parking, rideshare, I think those are important issues. But the nexus, as Andrew said, the nexus is important to where the district spends its money, just for good governance reasons.
Okay. Kat.
Kind of hard to choose just 3. I think first, I think housing is huge. I'm super proud of what the airport has done so far to help with the housing situation. I was on the board of the community foundation when we started looking at that and trying to find solutions, and the airport's been a great partner with other agencies to figure out how to provide more workforce housing. I think dispensable space is also huge. I'm just, I don't see that we're going to be building a lot of new roads or expanding roads out of here when that horrible forest fire comes, knock on wood. But so I think prevention is probably as much a key as trying to figure out how to evacuate everybody. I think defensible space is something that everyone could get behind, and certainly has a lot of agencies that would be interested in that. And I think transportation, I think for a number of reasons, primarily to reduce the greenhouse gases and provide, there are a lot of people who don't have any transportation in this region, that can't afford a car or can't stand in line or sit in line for an hour just to get out to Squaw Valley because there's one 2-lane road that goes out there. So I think those are 3 really crucial areas. And, I guess I would argue at some level, the nexus could be, we could figure out a nexus for pretty much any of the problems. I mean, I understand the point about good governance, but I also think the airport is so central to this community that I think we have responsibilities that may reach beyond the obvious connection to the airport.
Okay. And Andrew.
I think the overlying problem that we have in this community is that we're stressed by the change, the increase, the growth. It's just stress everywhere we look. We're seeing stress in increased aviation operations. We're seeing stress in other traffic coming in. We're seeing stress in crowds. We're seeing stress in crowds not leaving us after the weekend. We're seeing stress in housing. We're seeing stress. And maybe we just have to get used to this ongoing growth situation. We're being loved to death and we're being strangled by what's going on. What can the airport do about it? I think it's part of the growth in the region. It's just symptomatic of the growth. I do think there are some opportunities, for example, increasing recreational opportunities. So spreading out the crowds as they come out to do various things. So maybe helping with trail development. Others are prevention, like the forest management. We need to stay on top of forest management. A lot of it's going on behind us right now, and that's stressful because we have like 20 logging trucks going up our street every day. But again, that's a high quality stressor, if you want. So I think, yes, the airport needs to be aware that it's part of what provides the stress that the community's exhibiting, but it can be part of the problem too.
Okay. And John.
Yeah. Before I respond to your question, I'd just like to point out that based on the numbers in the article, you'd think we had $6 million at the airport to distribute every year. And the fact is that while we've got a lot of revenue, we also have cost of goods sold for fuel. And I'm not sure the number is 6 million. And so I just like to make sure that the world understands that. We do have a surplus, but I'm not sure it's as big as you think it is. My focus would be, predominantly, I think, number one for me would be land acquisition. We've been very effective at keeping developments from going up around the airport, and I think we should continue with that. If there was a practical way to move traffic to one of the other runways and disperse traffic, I would support that, but I'm not sure. We've looked at that over the last 8 or 10 years, and it's still a big question mark for me. So I think I'd throw my support behind housing as the next big item. And lastly, I really believe that forest restoration in this community is a significant safety issue. If we don't get it right, we're not going to have a community a la what happened in Paradise. Thank you.
Thank you. So, and some of you have touched on this next question, or you've probably been hearing about it. The airport's in the process of developing a variety of approach and departure paths in order to distribute rather than concentrate overflights. What are your thoughts on this proposal? And this one, we start with Bill.
I think that's a great idea. I certainly believe that from the IFR side, that as long as those routes are developed in accordance with FAA TERPs, that the airport should move forward with getting those developed and approved and put into practice by the put into practice, with the understanding that some of those procedures may or may not be doable by all of the planes leaving or arriving, but certainly having opportunity and options makes all sorts of sense as long as they're compliant with TERPs. As far as VFR, I remember the first time that
I know what it means, but this is also being broadcast, so say what TERPs is. I know terrain.
The acronym isn't spelled the same. Terminal.
Oh well, I thought you might know. Go on.
I do. Terminal instrument procedures. Sorry, Mayor. Senior moment. So the FAA has certain guidelines for developing instrument approaches and departures and arrivals, and those are published, and that's what the FAA requires that those procedures follow. So as long as what the airport's doing follows TERPs guidelines or TERP standards, I'm all for them. Again, knowing that not everybody will be able to do that. As far as the VFR, visual flight rules, where the pilot is more or less on his own navigation, I think that the new program, getting people to go to the scales and then coming into the airport, makes all sorts of sense. And if those continue to be tweaked as the controllers say would work better, I'm all for it. As far as dispersion or concentration, I think that being able to give those folks at the end of 29 a break in the morning and make runway 002 or 11 be the departure in the mornings when the wind and weather allow should be done. And that way it's not going to give the people at the end of the runway a break all the time, but at least they'll have a better understanding of the timing and their opportunities to get a break. So so dispersion, but twice a day.
Thanks. Kat.
I like the idea of dispersion. I'm on the outgoing flight path as you are, and so I like the idea of sharing the pain around the region. I think there are just some neighborhoods that get hammered. I have friends who tell me in Sierra Meadows they can't have their windows open during the summer. It just sounds, the quality of life has definitely been affected in some neighborhoods much more than others. But I do think that if we have a dispersion type of program, and whether it's related to time of day or wind direction, it's important to get that information to the community so they know what to expect. And if they suddenly have flights over their house on an afternoon when they didn't think they were going to, it's because the wind changed. So I think it's important for our community members to understand why planes are flying over their house and what factors into that.
Great. Andrew Terry.
I think our first problem is that we are now under ATC, air traffic control supervision, albeit as our employees, and their focus is absolutely 100%. Number one, safety, 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 and number 5 and 6 is safety and safety. And so they always use the safest, or what they perceive to be the safest route, not the most community friendly routing. So somehow we need to influence our controllers to have other criteria in the mix, that when it's safe to do so, use the calm wind runway, for example. On the concept of concentration versus dispersion, I'm afraid dispersion is just moving concentration from one routing to another. And so it's just another segment of the community is going to get hammered. And so it isn't sharing the pain throughout the community, it's sharing from one corridor to another corridor. So we should manage expectations on how much noise we can move with dispersion. But again, I come back to ATC have to be directed to use alternatives rather than picking the biggest runway and flying folks out into the wind and making their right turn departures, which is the standard that we have in place at this airport right now. So we need more flexibility with ATC. Thank you.
Okay, this would go to John.
Yeah, I'm a very strong supporter of dispersion. However, I'd like to point out that we have over the next 2 years the opportunity to move at least 1,000 jet landings from flying over Sierra Meadows during visual days, and move them to a developed visual approach that is published and put into the autopilots of all these jets that can start an approach from a spot over Lake Tahoe, fly in over 267 where there are no houses, and land on 29. And that was the whole purpose of getting a tower and getting ADS-B installed. And I would think moving 1,000 planes from the Sierra Meadows, Lahontan, Martis, North Star communities would be a real value to the community. Thank you.
Okay, and Lisa.
Yes, thank you. So I know the airport is currently in that process of developing a variety of those approaches regarding the paths for dispersion and concentrated flights. I believe with the additional investment that this airport has already made, with a full-time tower, new requirements for the planes and an ADS-B, the current noise monitoring and tracking in place, I believe looking at this and developing a variety of approaches around dispersion is kind of the next step to helping us reduce that noise reduction, as been stated other ways with the other candidates in their neighborhoods. I think this airport has put the right foundation in place to actually come up with a successful solution as we move forward. I'm in one of those neighborhoods, and I get them on the way in. So I think that I applaud the airport for continuing to relook at this over and over again. Thank you.
Let's see. And I was, one of the things I've been talking about is our mission statement. We have a high quality airport. That's the first phrasing. And the last part about supporting the community. And the third part about those neighborhoods that are affected. Do you consider you live in an affected neighborhood? And yeah, that would be a question. And this one we start with Kat. Yes.
Yeah. I do live in an affected neighborhood. And in fact, it's gotten a little bit better since we figured out that my father-in-law, who's a pilot, had told a bunch of CFIs they should fly over my house because we have an island, and it was a good visual marker of where they were. So Mike Cook took care of that, thankfully. So that's it's fallen off a little bit. But yes, absolutely. We get the departures, and jets, not so much. They're pretty high by the time they get to my house, but the smaller planes and the jump plane are very annoying, and can be, depending on weather and cloud cover and wind, just sound like they're right in my backyard.
Okay, thank you. Next would be Bill. No,
Andrew.
Andrew. Sorry.
Yes. Technically, I live in a noise influence area as defined by the map that's published. So yes, I'm in a noise impacted area. In fact, I just had a plane fly over, although it's just a small prop and it wasn't annoying. I heard it, so it was noisy, but it wasn't annoying. I phoned in a jet recently. It turned out to be a military operation, so that wasn't a complaint. That was just an observation. I am under an approach route, mostly the heavy approach route, but again, they tend to fly further out, so I don't have that big an impact at this time, even though it shows on the map. So I'm just trying to be fair here. Yes, I'm in a noise influence area, but it's not that bad, or it's not as bad as when I was ultra conscious of overhead aviation flights. So maybe I've mellowed in my old age or gone deaf. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, John Jones.
Yeah, I also live in an impacted area. I live right next to Sierra Meadows. And I look forward to working with the airport board to move a lot of this traffic to a visual approach coming in from Lake Tahoe. Thank you.
Okay.
Then me.
And you.
So I am actually in Winter Creek. So I'm on the edge of the approach, but I can tell you that that edge is really not there. They fly over. So I am definitely someone who is impacted. So.
Okay. And Bill.
And I too am adjacent to Sierra Meadows, so in the downwind, under the downwind leg. Used to be more impacted when the departure from runway 19 or now 20 was a right turn. Now it's a left 270, which helped. So I'm under them. The powers are typically pulled back, but it's not as noticeable as someone on departure. But one thing that I've actually talked to staff a little bit about was in some older airplanes with a constant speed or an adjustable pitch propeller, we've all heard the whan noise, and when somebody changes their propeller pitch and they're still in the governing range. So I think that one minor thing we can do, Mark Covey and Hardy and those guys that do a great job, is make sure that pilots are cognizant of those kinds of impacts. It doesn't affect everybody, but it is something that does happen, and is most noticeable to me in the downwind leg.
Okay. Yeah, the approach and departures each have different sounds. And everybody north gets to experience both. And this last question is, if we do go to an election, let's say that's what comes out of all this, what do you think is an appropriate amount of money that's reasonable to be spent on a small local election? Because it's gotten very expensive, and I'm just curious what you think is a reasonable number. And this would start with Andrew Terry. You know, it's what I'm seeing. It was 80,000 2 years ago, 51,000 so far on some candidates in loans, and that seems like an excessive amount of money for a small local. What's your opinion on that?
Are you talking about funding an individual's run for
Right.
a seat?
Because if we end up going towards an election, then we'll be facing an election in March, April, May. And what do you think is reasonable for a small?
I think things may have gotten a bit out of hand it's a local election. In the scheme of things, it should be enough to perhaps put out some yard signs, attend some candidate forums, and perhaps even throw out a flyer and some newspaper advertising. How much does that add up to? Ballpark, I don't know, 20,000, 10,000. It's up to the individual how important, not how important, how valuable it is for them to invest in marketing themselves. But I do think things have gotten a little out of hand when you're up into the tens of thousands and then multiple tens of thousands for a local election position. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. John Jones.
Yeah, maybe I misunderstood the question, but I think you were asking how much money do you think the airport should spend on creating an election?
No,
Am I correct, or is Andrew correct?
No, what I'm asking is, most campaigns are spending, not counting the airport, most campaigns are spending $2,000 to $5,000. This airport district in 18, there was $80,000 raised. This current one, there's 51,000 by some candidates. That all seems, I know people in town who think that's excessive and looks like it's being bought. And so I'm asking you, what do you think is a reasonable amount of money for a small local one special district election? What do you think?
What I think is whatever it takes to get elected.
Okay.
You know, some people have local relationships. Some people have relationships with the media. You have newcomers coming in from the outside. You know, I don't think there is one pat answer to that question. So, but thank you for asking.
Okay. Lisa.
Yeah, truthfully, I think the election process has gotten a little out of hand, not even at the local level, just the amount of money that is spent to get somebody elected. I believe that, hopefully you don't have to spend more than a couple $1,000s to actually get your name out there. And hopefully that what you're running on resonates with the folks that are going to elect you. And so it is my hope that we start to return back to a little bit of normality, and that because there are ways to do outreach to connect with individuals that don't have to have a large significant impact. So that's kind of how I feel about it anyway.
Okay, thank you. Bill.
I also think that the whole election process, whether it's national or state or local, is getting to be too expensive. There is a certain amount of fixed cost of advertising and brochures and mailers and yard signage. But I also think that some people are at a disadvantage because they're not as I think it's become a popularity contest. And there are some candidates who have a long list of the who's who of town supporting them. And then the folks who may have a great campaign, great ideas, but aren't as popular with that group, I think they have to spend more money to get their name out and to get as much exposure as those folks who have the long list of supporters. And so I think I understand your point. I understand your reasoning that there needs to be a limit on it, but I just don't think that a number is appropriate unless everybody plays by the same rules, as far as endorsements and all that goes along with that.
Okay, thanks. And Kat.
I feel like the airport district is the largest district in the region aside from the school district, and so some people who are spending $2,000-3,000 for PUD, for instance, that's probably enough for them. I do think the airport candidates have to spend more because the district is so large. In order to get their name out there, I think I like to take a page from the David Diamond campaign playbook and use the money wisely and get your name out there and get as much information about your platform as possible. And he's done it for less than 10 grand. And I think he's done an incredible job of letting people know who he is. As a relative newcomer to town, he didn't have that to fall back on. So I think 10 grand is probably a good limit. And again, I think it's a big district to campaign in.
Okay. Well, thanks. Those are my main questions, and I appreciate going through with each of you, and taking notes, because that's how I remember stuff. little fix, but that's how I do things. Did this bring up any other questions for you, Lisa or Rick? Or Teresa, or?
I don't have any more questions, Mary. I thought the candidates all did a great job answering your questions, and I appreciated the range of topics that you covered. So thank you. Thanks for taking us through that.
No additional questions from Rick. Thank you.
I had only the question or clarification that John and Bill are pilots, but the other three are not. Is that correct?
Yes, for me.
Yes, correct for Lisa, not a pilot.
Andrew, not a pilot.
I'm not
Okay.
a pilot.
That was the sum of my questions. So if we don't have any other questions, where do we go with this, Josh?
So now it's turned over to the board for any internal discussion or deliberation you'd like to have. And then once you're done with that, if you'd like, we can fill out the matrix and start that process. But if there's any initial discussion, the board could do that now.
And is the matrix, is it an oral thing, or are we emailing you, or how are we going about that?
What we'll do is ask you to fill it out and then verbally tell me what your number is for each candidate as I go through it.
Okay.
Teresa,
Rick,
it's Lisa.
Mary?
Yeah, just so much process, right? In addition to all the content, but I do not have any comments, observations, etc. right now. Depending on what other board members want to do, I'm happy to move ahead to Josh leading us through the matrix step, but also happy if other board members want to have some deliberation.
I suggest we go to the matrix.
Mary?
Which is not a vote. It's an indication, and no way anybody gets appointed without a motion, a second, and 3 votes.
That's correct.
So, I really am thankful to the answers from all the candidates, and I think there's really some thoughtful responses here. So I'm very appreciative of that, and it's made it a little more difficult of a choice. So that's good. And in terms of thoughts, we know we will be getting a pilot, at least 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, in the election. And I see this district as a business. It's like you wouldn't want all doctors on a hospital board or working nurses or only teachers on a school board. So I think it's an important thing, an important educational level and skill to be on our board. And we know we will be getting at least 1 pilot, maybe 2, maybe 3 after the election. So I just want to put that out there because I think this is a business that we're running, and keep that in mind. So thank you.
So I want to follow up on that comment and say we will for sure get 1 pilot in the general, and maybe more.
Right.
But I think it's really important for us to have pilots on the board, and not necessarily majority, but I think at least 2 personally. So
Yeah, but we could end up with the majority.
we could. We could end up with the minority with only one pilot, right? Depending on who's appointed during this process. So,
and had this all happened a month earlier, we would be facing different decisions, or a month later, so it's kind of a bummer that we're having to go through all this. Jim's resignation is what I'm meaning.
I know what you mean. Nothing more for me.
Yep.
So you ready for the verbal straw poll or whatever you call it?
Yeah, so I just gave the board members an opportunity if you want to fill it out, and then I'll start calling you, and we'll go in alphabetical order the applicants, and I'll go ahead and use Director Headington's way of asking the questions, where I'll start with her, and then the next time President Odette will be the first person for the next candidate, and we'll kind of work our way through. And again, at any point, any member of the board can make a motion. This is just a way to express interest and help the decision-making process. So let me know when you're ready.
Okay,
I'm ready.
Okay, John Jones, Director Hetherington.
5.
President Odette.
1.
Director Stevens.
4.
Director Wallace.
5.
Lisa Kruger, President Odette first.
3.
Director Stevens.
3.
Director Wallace.
4.
Director Hetherington.
3.
Bill Quizno, Director Stevens.
2.
Director Wallace.
2.
Director Hetherington.
4.
President Odette.
2.
Catherine Rolfe, Director Wallace.
3.
Director Hetherington.
2.
President Odette.
4.
Director Stevens.
1.
Andrew Terry, Director Hetherington.
1.
President Odette.
5.
Director Stevens.
5.
Director Wallace.
1.
Okay. I made an Excel spreadsheet to make it a little bit easier, so just give me a second so we can kind of see all this.
Very interesting dispersion.
Yeah. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay.
If you can do it, yes.
Well, I'm going to give it a shot. Does that work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't want to speak for the board, but there's no clear number one candidate. But the two, and just a reminder, the lowest number is shows the most preference. So the two lowest were Bill and Catherine.
Yeah, it's really not very conclusive, in my opinion.
Do we go through it again?
What do you mean, vote again? Why would that change?
Well, just seeing those numbers might change.
It's not going to change anything for me.
It would change for me.
Okay. I'm happy to do it again.
So would you like me to do all candidates again, or
Sure.
Okay.
Wow.
All right. John Jones, Director Hetherington.
5.
President Odette.
1.
And President Odette, if you'd like to just indicate that none of your answers are changed, I can skip you. It's up to you.
None will be changed.
Okay. Director Stevens, and same question to you. If you'd like, I can go through each applicant, or if you'd like, you can keep your answers the same.
Rick?
I'm thinking. No change. Any votes?
Okay. And then Director Wallace, same question.
5.
All right. Lisa Kruger, Director Hetherington.
3.
Okay. Director Wallace.
4.
Bill Quisnell, Director Hetherington.
Quells now. 4.
Director Wallace.
2.
Kathleen Rolfe, Director Hetherington.
1.
Director Wallace.
3.
Andrew Terry, Director Hetherington.
That would switch to a 2 then.
2. And then Director Wallace, that would be 1.
Yeah, correct. You're correct, Josh.
So the only change was Mary's switch on Rolf and Terry. That I
And
could
Lisa
see.
made a change.
She
No.
did?
No.
I didn't.
No.
I didn't get any change.
Yep, and just sharing the updated matrix, and as Director Stevens notes, with this, there were this switch, and so now this is the revised average numbers.
Well, I would make a motion that we appoint Kat Rolfe to the airport board.
I second that motion.
Roll call.
I think Teresa, we either have to have deliberation or probably public comment before we do the roll call. Josh can help us out there.
So actually, Director Wallace, we're only required to do public comment at the beginning of the item. So if the board would like, we can reopen public comment, but it's not a requirement.
Do we have any public comment?
We have one public comment on Zoom. I forwarded that to Josh Nelson through the chat feature, and I'd like Josh to read that.
Okay. Thanks, Hardy. And sorry, I just saw it. Why did Rick get to ask his questions and this is from Donna Brown. Why did Rick get to ask his questions advanced in private? I thought the board had agreed to ask all questions of candidates in a public forum, and now we hear questions were sent in private. Why are his questions not attached to the meeting agenda? Airport transparency ? Please ask Rick to give his questions in public now, as this does not seem acceptable since he is running too. And I would just note.
Well, I'm not running for this appointment, and I did in the last meeting. I did give my 7 questions, and the board decided that they didn't want to ask the 7 people or the 5 people my 7 questions. So I got permission from Josh Nelson to ask those questions, and I got all 5 candidates to answer them. Essentially, I heard the same thing as you heard in this meeting, but I was also admonished by Josh Nelson not to share the answers with anyone. I did share them with my wife, however.
And that's correct. I did ask Director Stevens not to share the answers to those with the other board members, just because if we shared those outside of a board meeting, that could be a serial meeting problem that we had discussed at prior board meetings.
Any other public comment?
None on Zoom.
I don't have any via email.
Okay. Any deliberations amongst the board?
No.
Not for me.
You ready for the vote? The roll
Sure.
call? Okay, Vice President Hetherington,
Yes.
President Odette,
No.
Director Stevens,
Yes.
Director Wallace.
Yes.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah, and I'm sure, well, I don't need to speak for other board members, although I feel it's a shared sentiment to express a deep appreciation for all the applicants, for their interest in the airport, the time that all applicants have put in time over the many years, literal time, to improve the airport, and appreciate it also with this round that we've gone through now. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree.
I agree. This is time. It's effort.
All right. So we have a new board member and we need to swear her in.
Yes. So item 2 is the oath of office. If Lauren could please provide that.
Hey, Kat, you ready?
I'm ready, Lauren. Thank you, everybody. It was kind of nerve-wracking.
It's easy, don't worry. I, Catherine Rolfe,
I, Catherine Rolfe,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. You are sworn in as of October 13th, 2020 at 3:00 in the afternoon.
Awesome.
Welcome. And
Thank you.
thanks everyone for putting in all the hard work.
Yes.
Okay, what's next, Josh? Are we done?
Yes. We're done. So any board member announcements, and then adjournment if there aren't any.
Nope. You right there, Mary?
Well, it's like it's saying I'm not charging, and I was down to 10%, and I was like, whoa, what happened? But, you got to just push all the plugs in again or find something. I
move we adjourn.
Well, I want to thank you all again to everyone who put in, and congratulations. Welcome. And I'll second your motion.
Thanks.
Hey, the public comment on that? I don't know if you take public comment on the motion to adjourn. Okay, roll call. Vice President Hetherington.
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Director Stevens?
Yes.
Director Wallace?
Yes.
Director Rolfe?
Yes.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Josh. You helped us through this.